And we will have a section at the end for questions, so please hold all of your questions until then. And so Jeanette, take it away.
Great, thank you. As Rosie said, my name is Jeanette Blyes, and I am the Outreach Coordinator for Community MT at the Montana Department of Commerce. First, I want to get started by just showing you where the construction and labor chapter is and its associated toolkits. So you'll start by going to our website, the Commerce website at commerce.mt.gov. And then you click on Infrastructure and Planning tab. And then you'll navigate down to Community Development Block Grant Program. And then you can scroll down, and there is a little box that says CDBG Grant Administration Manual. And this will take you to the manual, which has a drop-down menu for each individual chapter. And then below that are all of the associated toolkits. So that with that, we can get started with our presentation. Great, and we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. The purpose of this session is to provide an overview of what is included in the construction and labor chapter of our 2025 revision of the CDBG Grant Administration Manual, including significant updates in the way the information is organized compared to the previous version of the manual. I will walk you through the key points and components of Chapter 6 and introduce you to the Labor Standards Officer Toolkit. This is not a CDBG Grant Administration Manual training, but rather an overview of the revised chapters and toolkits. We will plan to hold an in-depth training on how to administer your CDBG project after the new year. And as I mentioned, we will have time for questions and discussion at the end. Next slide. We made a couple of significant changes to the Labor Standards Office or the Labor Standards chapter to clarify the state and federal requirements and streamline grantee responsibilities in a chronological way. First, at the beginning of the chapter, there is a words to know section with vocabulary and definitions helpful for understanding CDBG construction and labor requirements. Each chapter in this manual starts out with the words to know section. In the labor standards chapter, the words to know include certified payrolls, Davis-Bacon Act, Davis-Bacon wage determination, HUD 4010, labor standards officer, section 3, system for award management, unique entity ID, and WH 347 payroll form. In the previous grant administration manual, the construction management chapter 9 was separate from the labor standards chapter 6, as were all of the associated templates and forms. So another significant change with this manual is that we merged the labor standards chapter and the construction management chapter into one. We did this because so many of the state and federal requirements, steps to follow, and the associated forms involved with managing the construction of your project coincide with the efforts to comply with federal labor standards requirements. So our goal in merging these two chapters is to provide a clear step-by-step understanding of the state and federal requirements and to provide you with the resources you need in the toolkit to complete each step as you move through bidding and the construction of your CDBG funded project. Next slide. The construction and labor chapter starts out with a discussion of the key requirements related to the federal Davis-Bacon wage compliance. Then we provide a detailed chronological outline of 15 steps you need to take in order to comply with the state and federal construction and labor requirements as you move through the life of your project. This includes requirements related to selecting the architect or engineer in accordance with state and federal procurement law, submitting draft bid documents for commerce review, bidding your project, and ensuring your labor standards officer has all the tools and guidance necessary to meeting their roles and responsibilities. This chapter also includes a clear list of the procurement documentation that must be submitted to Commerce and kept on file with the grantee related to bidding and awarding the project to the construction contractor. Next slide. The primary purpose of the Labor Standards Officer Toolkit is to serve as a complete step-by-step guide for the Labor Standards Officer, or LSO, designated to your CDBG project. The LSO is designated by the CDBG grantee and is responsible for ensuring compliance with all CDBG labor standards requirements. The toolkit outlines 10 steps to successfully serving as an LSO and provides the necessary templates and forms the LSO needs to serve in that role. Next slide. The Labor Standards Officer Toolkit starts out with a reference to a very important set of HUD publications that your LSO will need called Davis-Bacon and Labor Standards, Agency Contractor Guide, and its addendum. This guide provides very clearly written and easy to understand explanations of all the topics your LSO needs to be on top of to ensure your project is compliant with Davis-Bacon, civil rights, and labor standards requirements. Next slide. Another highlight of the LSO toolkit is that we provide a script that the LSO can read at the pre-construction meeting that covers all of the information and requirements that must be verbally presented by the LSO to the prime construction contractor and subcontractors in attendance at the pre-con meeting. Next slide. The LSO toolkit also includes copies of the HUD required certified payroll form and employee interview form with instructions on how they must be completed and what to look for when reviewing the certified weekly payrolls against the Davis-Bacon wage determination. Next slide. This concludes our overview of the revised Construction and Labor chapter and LSO toolkit. Thank you so much for joining. We would now like to open it up for questions. And also, if you have any project-specific questions, we ask that you please contact your project specialist to discuss those separately. So if you have a question, please just go ahead and you can raise your hand, or you can put your question in the chat. Raising your hand is probably the most efficient, so we see you.
I'm not seeing any questions. However, if you have questions at a later date or after you've reviewed the chapter and toolkit, Our contact information is on the screen, so you can always let us know if there's any project specific or any other questions that might come up later. Thanks to Jeanette for a great presentation. We will now have our next presentation and procurement, and we're gonna take a break. And that presentation will start later. Thank you all for joining us.